Hey, all. Welcome to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Quinn, with my other host,
Dom DiTolla.
And we're just a couple of comics who love sports, talking sports, and we're just going to continue to talk sports. So this episode, we're talking about Shawn Kemp.
The Rain Man.
Yeah.
And big reason why we're doing this episode is fellow Tucson comedian Ali Musa had suggested he'd be a great subject, which he was. And also wanted to give a shout out to Ali and his fantastic podcast. It's called the Ollie USA Podcast. You can find that on Spotify, Apple, and wherever podcasts are listened to.
Yeah, Ali Musa just won the Tucson Best Comedian. Well deserved. So I got to give a shout out for that. And a special thank you because this was a great research.
This was a great research topic. Absolutely.
Yeah, Shawn Kemp is just one of those guys where his career just kind of went in different directions.
In different directions, but still an interesting character.
I felt like he was really given the short end of the stick a lot of the time. He was really given bad.
He was.
So we'll start with him in high school.
Yeah, born
November 26th.
November 26, 1969 in Elkhart, Indiana.
Yep.
Elkhart, Indiana.
And Indiana's just a huge basketball state.
Yeah.
So
Hoosiers.
Yeah, we'll get back into this because he is essentially the greatest, or he's essentially the best basketball player in high school.
Yeah, 4-year varsity starter. I mean, the second he arrived on his high school campus, he was a star.
Yeah. And in his senior year, a lot of people thought he should have been given this award, Mr. Basketball of Indiana.
1988, yeah, Mr. Basketball.
And really was not given it, people think, because he committed to going to the University of Kentucky.
Yeah, there was a lot of kind of dirty politics behind that. His high school coach, Jim Hahn, had kind of said that since he wasn't going to play at Indiana or Purdue or Notre Dame or any of the schools within the state, a lot of the media who votes on this completely shunned him.
Which is crazy because he was like top scorer, top rebounder. And it was like, if you watch any of these, he was the best player in Indiana.
Yeah, no, and the guy that ended up winning it ended up going to Purdue.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that he didn't win that because it is a prestigious title, but you know that he's on to bigger and better things after dominating at the high school level.
But I feel like it's that first kind of like spur in his saddle where shit just goes against him constantly.
But he keeps moving forward, to his credit. He ends up enrolling at the University of Kentucky, like you had said.
Yep.
The problem for Shawn is that while he's not, intellectually inferior to anybody, he can't score high enough on the SAT to qualify to meet the minimum academic standards to play a sport. However, because he is on scholarship, there is a special rule at the time. I think it's still in play today, but at that time it was called Proposition 48, which basically says if you can't score high enough on the SATs, you can still go to these schools, you can still go to college, but your freshman year, you have to academically qualify to stay at that college level, A, and B, you are ineligible to play and you lose a season of eligibility.
Yeah, so it's not like they redshirt him.
No, he's not redshirted. He doesn't get that luxury.
And they're essentially on academic probation. So they just have to show that they can do what is needed in a college setting.
And a lot of famous athletes that had happened to during that time period. I know Junior Seau was a very famous example at USC, but yeah, Kemp kind of falls into that category. And his first year in Kentucky, when he's not able to play basketball, and his coaches even said, like, honestly, looking back, I thought he should have gone to either Europe or just gone to the NBA, but there wasn't that precedent set.
No, there wasn't that path that he needed, which was straight to the NBA,
and
which
it was
he
very
was ready
rare.
for.
It was like Moses Malone or Chocolate Thunder Dawkins, and that was it. But Kemp definitely had the talent.
Yeah, he came like 5-6 years too early.
He really did.
Yeah.
I mean, because had he been drafted, or had he entered, was out of high school in like 98, oh God, he would have been in, a
number one, number two. Yeah,
seriously.
But this also kind of goes into his favor because he gets drafted lower than he really should have.
Yeah.
So we'll continue with college.
We'll continue into that. But yeah, his first year at Kentucky, he runs into some issues that aren't academic related.
Yeah.
Where you want to get into it then?
Well, the coach's son accuses him of stealing gold chains and then pawning them for like $700 or some shit like that.
Yeah.
And
he's basically leaves the school because of it. And the problem is Eddie Sutton, Hall of Fame coach for Kentucky, later at Oklahoma State. His son, Shawn Sutton, had some gold chains stolen from him. Shawn said Kemp didn't even take them.
Yeah, he got misinformation from this third party that was involved with them. And Shawn pretty much just this guy was like, hey, I got some gold chains. Will you pawn them for me? And Shawn was like, okay.
Yeah, extra money in my pocket.
Yeah.
I obviously am not making money, especially not even playing because boosters aren't paying me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he ends up leaving Kentucky just after a semester.
Yeah.
He's gone. After a year, he's gone. And he ends up at Trinity Valley Community College in Texas.
Which is weird. Yeah, it was a weird...
And he doesn't... And the odd thing about that is, as far as going to Texas, is he didn't even play basketball at the community college level.
No.
And, he's a year out of school and hasn't played basketball, competitively. What does he decide to do? What are you going to do with your life? Are you going to get into another school? What is Shawn Kemp going to do? And I'll tell you what Shawn Kemp does. In 1990, he decides to go to the NBA.
Which is what he really needed to do. I feel like he was just pretty much biding his time going to this community college until the 89-90 draft came along. And then he was like, look, this is mine. And like I alluded to earlier, he gets drafted lower than what I think he would have been drafted if he had played that 1 year of college.
Yeah.
Or even if he came straight out of high school, I think he would have been more heavily recruited.
Yeah, the teams would have been on him because the media hype train would have been behind him, and they would have been like, oh, there's this high school player who's 6'10", 240 pounds that can just dunk with the best of them.
Yep.
And yeah, the 89-90 draft, he slips to the 17th overall pick, which is honestly kind of a good thing.
Oh, for him, definitely.
Because he's going to a team that's not in a crappy situation. Obviously, the Sonics aren't as dominant as they'll become with Kemp, but he's going to kind of a stable type of franchise. He doesn't have to be the star right away, which you kind of see in his first year, where he's only has one start in 81 games.
Yep.
He's really being mentored by a veteran, Michael Cage, that first year in Seattle. And
they brought him along the right way.
They really did.
Not having that year of college, having that year off competitive, they essentially put him on the bench for that first year.
They redshirted him.
They redshirted him.
Only
it was perfect.
Yeah.
And then that second year, he becomes the Rain Man.
Yeah, his first year in the NBA, he averaged less than 14 minutes a game.
Yeah.
And to be fair, when you have raw talent that just isn't there yet, that's kind of a good thing because you have the patience. They had actual patience with him to do that.
And to build him into their system.
Yeah, to be that power forward center that they desperately need in the front court that can be a dominant force in the NBA, which the 6-time All-Star was.
Yeah, well, this is when we see that power forward 6'10" guy become, I feel like this is that era where they're just so great, where the center now has become 7'1", 7'2".
Yeah.
So that 6'10" guy gets moved down to power forward.
But then unlike a lot of those guys, Kemp can run the floor.
Oh, in Seattle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
he is such a different player from Seattle to the Cavs because he was such a great team player running the floor.
Yeah.
In this offense.
Gary Payton, guys like that around him. I mean, because 90-91 comes, and then he starts really. The team makes the playoffs. He's averaging over 15 points a game. He's got 10.8 boards a game. Shawn Kemp was good for a double-double a season, for a season average for 7-8 years in a row.
For his entire Seattle career, obviously, except for the first game in which they were redshirting him. But I saw that his entire Seattle career, he averaged a double-double.
Yeah, he's basically between 16 and 20 points a game and 10 to 12 boards.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you want from that player, which is why Seattle and this Western Conference in this 90s was
the Western
Conference.
Because it wasn't like you had the one dominant team like the Bulls.
Nope.
You had 5 or 6 really good teams who would duke it out every year.
That had 2 or 3 great players.
And they were so interesting. All the series went 6 or 7 games.
Yep.
I mean, they were so competitive and so much fun to watch.
I felt like it was kind of like the early, I don't know if you watched basketball on the bubble this year, but the Utah-Denver series reminded me of that. It was just this is a great series between 2 lesser, if you will, teams.
Yeah, no, and by 90-91, they're really starting to acquire the type of talent to make deep postseason runs because not only have Gary Payton, Hall of Famer, Eddie Johnson, Michael Cage, Ricky Pierce, Derek McKee, Dana Barros, Nate McMillan, and what was that guy's name? Oh, yeah, Nate McMillan. They had a couple other guys I'll get to later. But yeah, they lost to the Jazz in the Western Conference semifinals.
Yep.
So, I mean...
So they're putting these pieces together, and Shawn Kemp is becoming a highlight reel.
Oh, he totally is.
That's the other thing.
92. The announcer for the Sonics, Kevin Calabro, came up with the nickname Rain Man. That's how kind of everybody knows him. That's his very famous nickname because, God, he brought the rain down whenever he got near the rim. Jesus.
It was the era of posterizing a guys because guys would stay in to block the shot.
Oh, totally.
And they would get either, dominated or it's makes for some of the greatest visualization of a dunk.
There are so many pictures of Shawn Kemp just dragging his balls across some poor center's face on the way to the hoop.
The only one that really takes, because he hangs on the basket a bunch, he's kind of known for that. The only one that really thinks that it's funny is Rodman. He's literally like hanging on Rodman. Rodman's just standing there like, I don't.
Because that's a typical Dennis Rodman response.
Yeah, he's just like, you're not going to get under my skin. That's like the opposite of how I roll.
But 92-93, and this is, Kemp is going crazy. He's at 17.8 points per game, 10.7 rebounds.
The perfect power forward.
Perfect power forward, and the Sonics are loaded.
Yep.
And they're making a deep postseason run. Unfortunately, it ends with the Suns in the Western Conference Finals in a 7-game series. If you've never watched it, go back and watch it because it is just up and down. Yep. So much fun to watch. This is the Charles Barkley Suns team with all that talent on them. I mean, it is... Man, the Western Conference was fun in that era because that's when I was actually really into basketball.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the 4 teams that you see from this era is the Suns, the Jazz, the Rockets, and the SuperSonics. I was about to call them the Seahawks.
Yeah, right. To a lesser extent, the Spurs as well.
Yes,
with David Robinson. Yeah,
and Sean Elliott.
Yeah, Sean Elliott.
Got to give a shout out to Sean.
Dude, love Sean Elliott. But they won 55 games that year, so you can tell that okay, Barkley's getting kind of older. This is the new team. This is the hot team because the next year they go out in 93-94 and they have an NBA best because Jordan's gone. Everything is wide open 93-94.
That year must have been so crazy because...
Oh, God. Everyone thinks they have a chance.
Yes.
Especially in the Eastern Conference. But in the Western Conference, you're like, oh, Jordan's not at the end?
If we make the finals...
We can win.
We're in. Yeah.
We could win this.
We could do this.
And they went 63-19. I mean, they were... I remember watching those teams, and they were the best team in the NBA, especially with Jordan out.
With Gary Payton's defense, and they were, like you said, the best team.
Hey, everybody. Just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
And because 92, 93, and 93, 94, they also add in a veteran Sam Perkins, and you get a budding Kendall Gill. And Kemp in 93, 94, 18.1 points per game, 10.8 rebounds. I know I keep bringing this up, but that's what he's good for a night for you. And if you have that every night, you have a really good chance of winning a basketball game. Unfortunately, and this is the first time that this has ever happened in NBA history, and I remember because I was living in Denver, it's a 1-8 matchup, because the Sonics are the 1 seed, and they lose their first round playoff series to a vastly outmanned but very gritty Nuggets team. And the main image you will always see from this series is at the very end, Dikembe Mutombo holding the basketball and screaming because they pulled off the upset of upsets.
Yeah.
And they won the game 5 because it was a best-of-5 series in Seattle.
Yes.
And that was... If you talk about Shawn Kemp's career, that's probably the one that he would say got away from him.
And it's kind of, his career starts to take, not a dive after that, but it starts to go down a little. So in 94 summer, he wins a gold medal. Gold medal at the FIBA World
FIBA Championship. Yeah.
But after that, you see the 95-96 season. And they are...
Yeah, by 95-96...
Again, still the same team.
They're the same team as 93-94, but after a disappointing 94-95 where they lost again in the first round to a Lakers team. Magic probably played on that team.
Oh, yes.
Or probably. It was right before he came back. But yeah, 95-96, they were 64-18, a game even better.
But this is when they finally put it together in the postseason.
And it was cool because that season... They were one of the only teams to beat the Chicago Bulls in the regular season, and that's 72-10. I mean, you could tell that they were the best team in the Western Conference running away, and they had finally put it together.
Yes,
I mean,
finally.
And that Western
don't lose in the first round.
Yeah,
which is ridiculous because they were so great in the regular season for like 3 years, and then.
But that what's it called? The Western Conference Finals against the Jazz that year, where they beat them in 7, is also a phenomenal series. And Kemp played
amazing. I think he had like 23 and 12 average or something. Like
he always shined in the postseason if you look at his statistics. But yeah, again, 19.6 points per game, 11.4 rebounds per game, and you add that with Gary Payton and the rest of that loaded roster. I think Detlef Schrempf ended up on that team. He was a great player.
I love Detlef Schrempf. What a great little pick right there.
But they advanced to the finals for the first time. For the first time with Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton and that core of players. And they run into Jordan.
Yep, Jordan's back.
And the Bulls. And they go down 3-0 in the series.
Yeah.
And then fight back. They win the next 2. They actually force a game 6, but then it's Father's Day. Jordan goes out and does Michael Jordan, as everybody knows, and it's over for Kemp and the Sonics, and it's kind of over for Kemp with Seattle for good at that point.
This is what's so sad about this team is I feel like the years in which they could have won where Jordan was gone, they go out in the first round.
Yeah.
Jordan comes back and they're like, this is us. And there just wasn't beating Michael Jordan in that era.
One of my best friends and we actually discussed this before, and he brought up a really great point. How many amazing players did Jordan leave ringless through his dominance?
Drexler.
No, Drexler won with Houston.
He did win one.
But yeah, Shawn Kemp is one. Stockton and Malone.
Stockton, Malone,
other ones. Yeah, Charles Barkley. I mean, you look at that dream team. Patrick Ewing is another good example. I mean, you look at that dream team. How many of those guys are the 50 greatest players in the NBA who don't have titles specifically because of Jordan's dominance?
Because Jordan went for 6.
But the 96-97, they're trying to come off it, and this is kind of Kemp's last hurrah with the Sonics.
So, let's get into this because he signs a contract in 94.
Yes, this is important, yeah.
He signs a contract extension in 94, and then the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement that they had with the players' union, made a rule that you couldn't renegotiate contracts for 3 years.
Yeah.
Which... people say that Shawn Kemp knew exactly what he was doing when he signed it. Other people say he didn't know what he was doing, and he kind of got bad advice.
Bad information from some of his handlers.
From his agents.
Yeah.
And this is when...
It almost parallels the Scottie Pippen thing in Chicago, where you have an all-star player, one of the best players in the game, who is making money not commiserate with his talent and productivity.
Not even close.
And again with Pippen and Kemp, it's the same type of thing. And they get pissed off, rightfully so, even though they did sign the contract.
Yes. Well, this is when the money gets injected into the NBA.
Yeah, finally by the mid-90s.
Yes,
yeah.
And the contracts that they signed 2 or 3 years ago would have been great. Now they're almost insulting.
They are. They really are. And he feels throughout this entire season very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Salty.
Salty, yeah.
He's really salty at management. He's salty at the rest of the league, seeing all this money being thrown around and he can't get a slice of pie. And he's really salty at the front office because they paid basically a do-nothing front court guy, Jim McIlvaine, like 33 or $37 million.
It's 33 over 7 years.
That's what it was.
And he was so unbelievably angry at this because they wouldn't renegotiate for him, but they went out and gave this guy like literally 2 or 3 times more than he did. And I'm pretty sure this guy was either the backup center.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was a guy they thought could be decent, but had no productivity, no history of productivity. And Kemp sits out like 20 days of training camp because he's that mad. And you can tell that his attitude is really affecting the team. 97
season, he's showing up late almost every single time. Missing practices. Like you said, he held out for a long time preseason.
Yeah.
He is really struggling mentally at this point. So,
and it carries over and, to the rest of the team.
Well, I want to bring up this they end up playing Dallas and they end up beating them, but they bench Kemp for like the second half because he's awful.
Yeah.
And for the week leading up, he was late to one practice, like he missed like half of it, and then he didn't show up to another practice.
God.
So Gary Payton, being the captain of the team, calls a team meeting, kicks everybody out, including the coaches, and they're like, what is happening? And that's when Shawn Kemp confides in them that he's having substance abuse problems.
Oh yeah, because that's always kind of affected him, and we'll get into that into the Jailblazer years.
And this is where he first admits to it, and it's not showing. It's only showing on his professionalism. It's not showing on his physique.
Yes, because he's built like a Greek god.
Yes, so he's doing he's drinking a shit ton, so he has a problem with alcohol. And then we find out later that he has a problem with cocaine.
Yep.
So in this era, he's pretty much partying all night and showing up whenever the hell he wants. And
still getting a double-double a night, which is unbelievable.
That's what I love.
Insane, dude.
But that's why the Sonics are still able to make it a trade with him that's kind of viable.
Yeah, because after the season, he still put up great stats. He's over 18 points a game and 10 rebounds.
But it's just completely unprofessional. That's the only thing, and that's why the SuperSonics really want to get rid of him, not because of his productivity, but because he's a problem in the locker room.
Yeah, and what they end up being able to do, to the Sonics' credit, they pick up Vin Baker from the Bucks, who also had some substance abuse and weight issues in his career.
Yep.
And Tyrone Hill goes to Milwaukee, and Shawn Kemp ends up in Cleveland.
Goes to the Cavs.
And this is pre-LeBron Cavs, so
the light blue Cavs.
Oh man, those jerseys are insane, dude. I
think of them, they're just like the baby blue guys. Yeah,
I can still see that logo on NBA Jam. Oh my god,
yep.
Right? Oh.
Yes, no, the NBA Jam. That's perfect.
But he goes to the Cavs and he's still producing. I mean, his first year there, they made the playoffs.
Still really. He and I heard this talked about. He becomes more of a selfish player.
He does, but he kind of has to be because he doesn't have the team around him.
He doesn't have the team around him. Yes, so he has to. His points go up a little bit, and just his production still is great. But they say that he gains 25 pounds every single off season and can't get it off with the Cavs.
Yeah, during the lockout year, the following year, 99. They were saying he was showing up over 3 bills.
Well, this is what I think is kind of messed up. Is they reported him coming in at 280, and then the GM goes,
"That's it." Yep.
The GM goes, "Look, he actually came in at like 315," and it was like, "Whoa!" And you look at him, you're like, "Yeah, he was like seriously overweight."
Yeah, and even at 6'10", there's good 315, like an offensive lineman who's like 6'8".
No.
6'10", it was a bad 315.
We brought this up with Shaq. What type of player Shaq would have been if he kept the weight off? The exact same thing I feel like with Shawn Kemp.
Yeah.
He could have been this power forward, which, I mean, he was still amazing production.
But unlike Shaq, Kemp just couldn't keep it together.
No.
He couldn't keep it together enough because Shaq had no off-court issues to the extent of Kemp. And yeah, you can fit 330 on a 7'1" frame if you are that dominant and you keep in some sort of physical conditioning.
Yeah, he was really just not in any kind of physical shape, which I have to give it to him for these productive years in Cleveland.
But
because
that's what's amazing. That lockout year, he had the highest points per game of his career at 20.5.
Yep.
I mean, even then, he's still an all-star, still a great player, but the public doesn't know that type of stuff is happening. It hasn't come to light. It hasn't been made known. So
he's pretty much looked on as a lazy player that's not putting in the effort.
Yeah, that was kind of the big knock on him. I remember growing up, everyone was just like, yeah, he's dominant, but really?
Yeah, which you look back and it's substance abuse.
And then you start feeling bad.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh man, the wheels are coming off. And I think the fact that the Cavaliers weren't very good and he's not around like his friends in Seattle because he has a great relationship with the city, I think that really massively affected him too, to the point like, why do I have to give a shit?
Yeah.
As long as I show up and get paid.
We see it affects the franchise. I wonder if Seattle would have still been there if they could have won one of those championships, or if, you know what I mean? There's so many what ifs.
I think they win 93, 94, the whole shebang and bang, because they'll beat Houston easily, and they'll beat,
whoever
Knicks.
Out of the East.
Yeah, the Knicks that year. 95, 96, not as good of a chance, but I think if they win that 93, 94 championship, not only does Shawn Kemp stay and maybe even become a Hall of Famer, I think the team stays in Seattle.
That's what I mean. It could have been a completely different turn for this franchise if they just didn't go out in that first round.
There is no Oklahoma City Thunder, everyone.
Which isn't a bad thing.
Which isn't like, no.
It's just crazy because I feel like his resentment towards basketball really shines through in the Cavs. Like he's like,
He has almost a Jay Cutler attitude about it.
Yeah.
And everything I've read, it kind of comes off as like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. No, seriously, though. And you can't necessarily blame him for the way he was treated, which sucks because of the contract disputes, because of essentially not winning a championship in Seattle. And I feel like the lack of rehab for these guys mid-season. So there's a lot of help for them post-career, post-season. Mid-season, it's more just like keep your head down and get through
the motions. Yeah. And I mean, 99-2000, they missed the playoffs again. And even though he plays and starts in all 82 games and puts up great stats, you can just tell that the fire isn't there with him.
I thought that was crazy. That was the only time he started 82 games.
I know, right?
And he looks out of shape.
Yeah, it's
for
amazing.
What he looked like in Seattle. Not out of shape like I look, but you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Woo! But it's sad because his career right after that just never even resembles anything like he was.
Because Cleveland's done with him after 2000, and then he goes to actually a contending team, actually near Seattle. He goes to Portland at that time, putting together the Jailblazers, who were really good. And I say Jailblazers because a lot of players getting arrested, a lot of players with issues.
Yep. Was that the era that Damon got?
Oh yeah, with the weed at the Tucson airport,
and he had like a pound. And you're just like, why do you have that much weed?
Well, that's not what surprises me. What surprises me is to think you can go through a metal detector wrapping your weed in aluminum foil.
Yeah, he just didn't give a fuck.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's Tucson. I don't care.
It's Tucson. Come on. He probably did it a bunch of times and got through. But
I'm sure
you're right.
did.
He went to this Trailblazers team, but this is when his substance abuse really...
This is when he finally ends up having to go to rehab, because that season ends up being cut short because he has to go to rehab for cocaine and alcohol and marijuana.
Yep.
Which... Marijuana rehab, I don't get, but cocaine and alcohol, goddamn right, you better go.
I'm pretty sure they just throw everything in at that point that you do, and they're just like, whatever.
And the thing is he's like a shell of his former self, and the other problem is he's playing on a team with that type of talent, like so loaded. Because the year before, they should have gone to the finals instead of the Lakers.
Yeah.
But he's only he's averaging less than half of his rebounds and points per game totals. He's a bench player.
He's a bench player. He's a rotation player at this point.
Yeah, and you just see how far the slide goes in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You can't even believe it.
Well, I feel like this is when the him being overweight and the substance abuse finally catches up to him, because he really was such a great physical condition that he could beat himself up for 3 years, and then
Yeah, and then the worst part is his former GM for the Sonics comes in the year later to Portland and tries to resurrect his career, and he just can't do it.
No.
He can't do it. And the following year, they even waive him, and he goes to the Magic, where he is on a decent team and he plays well.
I was going to say,
shit together.
It was kind of weird when he went to the Magic. I felt like the atmosphere in Portland was not good for him, because he goes to the Magic and plays almost the full season as a starter.
Yeah.
And
he's
not
productive.
yes.
He's not dominant, but he's still like a viable NBA player.
8.6 rebounds or some shit like that. But you're still like, you could still play with this, but...
And he definitely... And then his career is over.
Well, he tries to make...
he tries some comebacks, yes.
I thought this was interesting. He retires in 2003, tries to come back in 2005. He has a tryout with Dallas. He shows up, he's overweight. He has a tryout with Chicago, he doesn't show up.
Yep.
And then
Denver.
Denver, and he just doesn't show up.
Yeah.
So he's pretty much overweight and realizes, hey, I can't play in this American game, so he tries to go to Italy.
And then he signs with a team, but then he leaves like immediately after because his house in Houston got destroyed by a hurricane Ike.
I thought it was interesting because I guess him and the GM of this Italian team knew each other from playing. This guy had played in the NBA, and they contacted each other, and he was just like, I just don't think it's worth you coming back.
Yeah, right.
And he was just like, okay. And that's when his basketball career is over, and we see this other aspect of his life, which is kind of crazy.
I mean, you have the 2005 arrest for weed and cocaine and a firearm. You have the 2006 marijuana arrest.
Yes.
I mean, in Texas, it's just
his life goes off the rails right after, and then he kind of starts to build it back up again.
He does.
It's interesting.
It's like almost that he took a break from basketball that it ended up helping him.
Yes.
Like he had to go through like all the growing pains and shittiness of a post NBA career, but he has ended up doing some really positive things, like fathering children.
How many does he have, Dom?
Shawn Kemp has 7 children with 6 different women.
And I found this interesting because I found articles about him being broke. And a lot of people say that
it's a child support thing.
A lot of his money goes to child support.
I mean, one of his sons played at UW.
Yeah.
Played basketball at UW, Shawn Kemp Jr., but yeah.
He earned $90 million in his basketball career.
Oh, man.
But to put that in perspective, I mean, half of it is going to tax, and then 12% off the top is going to your agents and shit. So,
and then another however many dollars going to your children.
That's what I mean. And then having 7 monthly child support payments, or 6 with 6, whatever it is.
Yeah.
He lost, and we talked about this with Rocket Ishmael, he lost more money than a lot of people will ever see, but still wasn't technically broke.
He wasn't technically like poor.
Yes.
It was just all the money was kind of squandered through, fathering kids, divorce, I don't know if it's divorce, but like bad investments, bad economic financial advice.
Well, I think of the Chris Rock joke about O.J. Simpson. Where he's like, if I'm making $5 million and you take half, I'm not starving. But if I'm making $40,000 and you take half, I might have to kill a bitch. And that's because people are saying that he was broke, but he wasn't broke. He was still essentially a millionaire. But he was the outpouring of money that he was doing was ridiculous. So
totally.
He was poor for an ex-NBA player. Well, I guess not. That's even
especially
tough.
From that era, even though he got screwed on that contract. I mean, you can make money. If he had stayed in shape, he probably could have played another 5 years and made money hand over fist.
Well, that's what somebody said. That's why he went to Orlando, because he wanted that extra year of pay.
Yeah.
Because he was essentially losing so much money.
Well, Andre Rison said he only played an extra year in the NFL just so he could get his pension.
Yep.
So you'd be eligible for that. So, there's the economic background to all of that.
Yes, definitely.
It's always in the background for it. But Sean's been doing well though recently.
I was going to say he had some investments, like I feel like a ton of professional athletes do. They're just like, I have this money sitting. Mm-hmm. What should I invest it in? Restaurants. And he had some failed ones, and then he had I think one that's really doing well.
Yeah, in Seattle, yeah. And then he has a brand new investment that just recently opened.
Yeah, I thought this is really interesting because the investments that these guys take are either sport related, or
entertainment or food related,
or it's a face, like I'm putting my face on this, and and this is what he did. He opened up a cannabis shop in Seattle, or multiple ones.
The first one,
the first one. Okay,
he was the first. It's the first cannabis shop in Seattle that's minority owned. Shawn Kemp is the proprietor of said establishment, which I say, good for you, sir.
Yeah, I saw the video of him walking around in his shop, and it looks great. And he opened it mid-COVID, which is crazy.
Yeah, it opened a week ago, I think. It finally, cut the ribbon on that stuff, And I commend him for doing that.
Yes, and being such a big part in the Seattle scene.
And he was one of the guys that really tried hard to prevent the team from moving.
Yes.
I think over time, he's it seems that he's realized he's mad at Sonics management and not the city and the team that he loves so much. Yeah, he's a Seattle guy now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a interesting story that kind of has a sad end, but then sad basketball end, but great overall end.
Yeah, it's almost like a shooting star type of thing where it's like, where the hell did this guy come from?
Yeah.
No college basketball, all-star, Rain Man. Oh, man, this ended poorly. Oh, wait, he's doing great again.
Yeah, I know.
Hooray for Shawn Kemp.
If we had done this episode 2 or 3 years ago, we probably would have been like, man, what a tragic situation.
What a waste.
Yeah. And now you're just like, man, he's really putting effort into that Seattle community. He's doing, all of that. I wonder if Seattle will ever get a basketball team again.
I think they're next on the list. They have to be.
They have to be,
the way
right?
that they got dicked over. Yeah,
And just what a big market they are.
well, not only that, they got a hockey team. I think they're playing next year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the Sonics were always in Seattle. I mean, like, they have to have a basketball team.
I know they have one of the bigger MLS teams, which I'm not an MLS fan. I'm a European soccer fan, but they have a huge fan base for
Yeah.
a soccer team in America. I'm just saying.
And I think the Sonics were the first pro sports franchise in Seattle.
Yeah, I think so.
Unless you count the Pilots for baseball, but that ended poorly. But yeah, So yeah, good for you, Shawn Kemp.
Yeah, good for you, Shawn Kemp. Thank you all for joining us.
Yep.
And we'll see you next week. Hey, everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say, give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.